sponsored by Browse McDowell. Additionally, we would like to recognize the Akron Beacon Journal, Ohio.com, for being a legacy sponsor for the Akron Roundtable. Please mark your calendar now for our next regularly scheduled roundtable, which will occur on Thursday, January 15, 2015, when the Akron Roundtable will present Mark Cohen, publisher of the Akron Beacon Journal, who will present on the topic, the media disruption and what it means for the Beacon. To make a reservation for any of the Akron Roundtable luncheons or to purchase a subscription to our luncheon series, please visit our website at akronroundtable.org. We also invite you to join our group on Facebook. Today, the Akron Roundtable is pleased to present Marty Kress, Assistant Vice President and Business Research Developer for The Ohio State University, who will present on the topic, Water, Our Most Precious Asset. I will now ask Brian Kinnaman, a member of the Board of Directors for the Akron Roundtable, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank everyone for coming today. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to introduce to you Marty Kress. In your brochures and the previous information, you've all had an opportunity to look at his resume and credentials, but I like to think of it kind of like this way. He's a distinguished alumnus of Notre Dame, Northwestern, and MIT. That's a pretty good start. He was a senior majority staff member of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Science, Technology, and Space. He actually worked with President Parenza in that capacity. He's a senior energy analyst for the U.S. Senate Budget Committee. He was the vice president of Battelle Institute in Columbus with emphasis on the NASA sector. He was the deputy director of the NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. He was also the executive director and president of the Von Braun Center of Science and Innovation in Huntsville, Alabama. And that organization handled very complex systems management, project management, and putting a man on the moon would have been within the scope of what their capabilities are. Currently, he is a guest lecturer and on the advisory board at the College of Engineering at Case Western Reserve, and also serves the same capacity at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. So, with that background, here's what makes Marty special to me. First of all, his door is always open. Secondly, his desk is always piled full of projects that he's agreed to help out on. Thirdly, he always has time to say hello and engage with anyone that he encounters. And he also has an uncanny ability to assemble chaos into rational, plausible, creditable propositions and proposals. And the last point is he can also never bring himself to say no to his friends. And because of this last attribute, I'm pleased to introduce to you my friend, Marty Kress.
I lid while he's putting the computer in. So in effect, I run a 7-Eleven at Ohio State, but I don't have a slushy machine. So it was a great career move for me. Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here, Madam President, members. You got the connection cable, don't worry. And I apologize in advance for people listening on the radio. I do have slides, but we'll post them so anyone can have them. In the words of NASA, Houston, we have contact. I think we're ready. So bear with me. Any of you that know me, I probably have 2 hours of material that I practice in the car to get it to 25. And he's going to hit me if I go a minute over because I would like to answer questions. The first thing, I'd like to say, well, why am I here today? And this is aimed at the students. And This wasn't in my mind until I drove up. In 1969 at Notre Dame, we had to read a book called The Silent Spring. In 1969, I had a roommate from Cleveland. If you all remember, there was a river on fire that started the whole environmental movement, the clean air, clean water legislation. So Notre Dame, in response to that, created a course called Environmental Science. And when you're a senior, what do? You take any class you want, and I took it, and I decided I was going to work in energy and environment. 2 years ago, almost to this day, my phone rang. It was Ohio State calling saying, we want to do something really new and innovative. We're going to have these 3 discovery themes, one for energy and environment, one for health and wellness, one for food safety and security. And you'd like to be part of that, and here's all you have to do. Build collaborative teams, find non-traditional sources of money, and make it happen. And I said, wow, what a great deal. But notice, at the back end of my career, I got to go back to where I started, which is a luxury for anyone, because we all have these dreams and aspirations we didn't quite get to. So I'm thrilled to be part of the OSU team, and a big reason is because a lot of quality people like Brian Kenneman work for OSU. So it's a great time to be there, and even if you don't go to all the football games, there's a lot going on campus. So with that, let me walk you through this and why I'm doing this. So remember those 3 discovery themes I mentioned to you? One was about health, one was about food, one was about energy and environment. So if you could visualize a triangle that says health, energy, and environment as the 3 points, what do you immediately migrate to in your heads? And this is what I did on the phone. I said, wow, that's really innovative. I always wanted to work on a big global water project. And there was this pause. And it was, water? How'd you come up with water? I said, well, that's the logical nexus. If you have food, if you have health, if you have wellness, you got water. And they go, no, the right answer is data analytics. So when the provost interviews you, say data analytics before you say water. So I had the right answer, and here I am. But what I'd like to do today is walk you through some things that I've been working with in the water space since I got to OSU. And the real takeaway of this is that theme of collaboration. How do we share our strengths and solve problems that face not only us locally, but in the region, but around the world? And that was the premise behind what we were trying to do at OSU. So how do you really get people to collaborate? I don't mean say it. I mean really get people to collaborate, put the higher level goal and objective at the top of the list, and put all your energy behind that. And I'm still standing, but we'll walk you through this. So let me start down this path. And now you know why the past really is prologue to the future. 30, 45 years later, I'm getting to do what I started. I'm sure you didn't know this when you walked in and you had that glass of water. You all lived in a water-stressed nation. And when I show this chart, I can't tell you how many people say, oh, no, not the United States. Yes, the United States. So the themes I'm going to talk about are water availability, water quality, and water access. And when you look at availability, you can't just sit here and get real comfortable. There's another map I was going to overlay, but I'm also IT illiterate, and I did this last night. But there's a map of the 752 localities around the world that either have problems today with algal blooms or hypoxia. Now, there's a sad comment in terms of, you talked about the value of our water, but do we value it and do we take proper care of it? The next slide I'll show you, again, this is the cover of Science magazine 3 months ago, because again, people will say, we don't have a problem. Notice the theme of Science magazine. It's not the drought you can see, it's the drought you can't see. What does that mean? We're draining our aquifers that are way beyond what we're replenishing that. We had a meeting in Ohio State 2 weeks ago. We had the Federal Hypoxia Task Force. Sounds lofty, doesn't it? They talk about nitrate going into the Gulf of Mexico. And sitting next to me was someone from the University of Arkansas, and I said, how much time do you spend worrying about nutrient runoff anymore? I moved back to Ohio from Alabama, and nitrates is our big issue. He said, since you left, we don't even focus on it. I said, really? What are you spending your time on? We're worried we're going to have any water next year for our crops. So they're also an aquifer-based economy. So this is an issue that you need to deal with, not just locally, but globally, and it's a big issue. And for Joe Ortiz at KSU, notice we're using on-orbit sensing assets to determine these things, which is an important step in our toolkits. Next picture I'm going to show you. Well, I talked about availability. What about water quality? Again, we take it for granted, and you may look at that map and you say, well, these regions of the world have water. You're looking at Tanzania, you're looking at Ethiopia, you're looking at regions around the world, real pictures brought back from staff from OSU, and that's the world that they live in. And we're trying to change their culture to where I can give you a solution to offer you clean water, but they look and say, but we have water, and we worry about disease, and they learn to live with it, even though they have a high infant mortality rate. But at the same time, this is an issue that touches your heart. Now let's talk about the economics. The World Bank just did 4 case studies. In these regions of the world, the price point for water is 3% of disposable income. How do you design to that level makes you think very differently about your solution sets. Now let me give you the second number in the reports, and that's both for water quality and sanitation. 55 to 60% of disposable income goes for a cell phone. Now the other challenge is, how do I make that cell phone integral to water quality, food, health, and the other related issues? So a big challenge that we all face globally. Next picture, these are some areas that we're intimately engaged in. So I'm going to talk a little about a global water initiative. Our focus is Tanzania, which is the nice brick building on the left. On the lower right, and I'm sorry for people on the radio, is a picture of a well in Ethiopia, and up above is Azerbaijan. Tanzania today has 5,000 inoperable wells. They either have no supply chain when a park breaks, people steal the rods out for other purposes, but listen to that number, 5,000 inoperable wells. And that's a challenge that we have. And I know you probably, through civic organizations and church groups like me, we've donated wells and pumps and we've done all these things, but we drop them off. We haven't designed them with the community's interests at need, and we haven't put a supply chain in so that if something breaks, you can get a spare part. So we have all these different pumps and well systems that just aren't sustainable. That's a key theme I'm going to be talking to you about. On the right, notice that well. Now imagine you climb down into that well. Imagine you're 8, 10 years old, you got 2 jerry cans in your hand, you got to climb down, fill it, and climb out, and then carry it home. And if you're lucky, you may walk for 2 hours. On average in Africa, you're walking for 3 to 4 hours each way to get the water, and your goal is to get 5 gallons of water back to your hut, because that's what it takes to sustain a family of 4 on a daily basis, for cooking and washing and drinking. Tough challenge. There was an entrepreneur in New York City who went over and saw this. So he put a group of entrepreneurs on a plane from California, flew them over and said, go get some water. By the end of the day, they had started a new not-for-profit called Charity.Water. The reason I mentioned that to you, it's one of the fastest growing charities in the world, and they've learned what they do well. They raise money, and then they contract with other foundations that are really good at implementing and managing projects to do that for them. The neat thing about this, the guy that's the CFO running this, OSU graduate, 38 years old, left Wall Street because he wanted to do something that was meaningful in his life, and this is what he decided to do. So there's a lot going on, but we still have a huge challenge facing all of this. You heard Byron say I work for NASA, so when I think of anything, I think of the system solution. I was saying at the table, the days of yesterday are gone. It's hard to sell parts anymore. People want the system, be it in healthcare, environment, manufacturing. It's just a different world. So when you look at this system, you can see it's a pretty hard set of challenges to try and resolve. But that's part of the key to this. How can I build concepts that do more than just provide the water? What if in addition to providing the water, I help with health and sanitation? And what if I help stimulate a local economy, say aquaponics or agriculture? And if you Google today, and I'm sure the computers are in the back of the room, farmline.org, there's a group now in Africa, 23 native dialects, giving people basic market information as to where you can sell your fish and at what price. And it's creating this huge surge in the economy because all of a sudden now you realize I can sell outside my village and I can increase my capacity. So there are lots of things going on, but notice the connection again. It's water, it's food, it's health, and the next one we're going to break is energy, and I'll get to that in a second. And the other thing is, as I alluded to, it's a scatter shot. We put a little something here, we put a little something there. So would it startle you to know that I have students at the Fisher College of Business coming up with a business plan for me to franchise solutions for third world countries. I'll let you know how lucky I am come May with that activity. So when you're trying to learn about, all right, we have a huge university, we have lots of assets, but what are the problems you're trying to solve? We went through over 150 different external reports. We benchmarked 40 other universities. We benchmarked 25 different foundations to say, what are they doing? How well are they doing it? And that was a tedious process. But when you go through that, you also learn some really interesting things. Has anyone ever heard of the pledge and guiding principles for WASH? Anyone in the room? Have you ever heard of the Sullivan principles? No one? It was what was the foundation for changing South African apartheid. It was a pledge made on behalf of corporations as to the work environment they were going to provide. This was announced, this was signed last September at World Water Day in Stockholm. 6 companies got it off the ground. 2 had big Ohio heritage. One is Greif Industries, which is located in Delaware. The other is Nestle's. I'm pleased to know North America Corporate is in Solon. But this is a pledge, and let me read what they agreed to do. This pledge aims to secure appropriate access to safe wash, water, health, hygiene, and sanitation for all of our employees and all premises under our company's direct control. Signatories can help set a leadership example to other companies to make a positive contribution to fulfilling the related UN objectives of universal access to safe drinking water and sanitation. Now, I devour the New York Times every Sunday. That's my fun morning. And I didn't know there were any UN principles on water and sanitation. And I think I know a lot in what's going on in this domain space. So would you be happy to know? There's the resolution. It was passed July 28th, 2010. And the set goal was to reduce the number of people in the globe that do not have water and sanitation by a factor of 50%. Do you know they think they are at that number right now? So in 2010, there were 2 billion people in the world without access to clean water and sanitation. We've now got the water down to about 900 million. Pretty amazing. Here's the challenge. How do you sustain that? How do you build a supply network? And now I hate to tell you, adding climatic changes to things in the world gets a little harder. But this is a major initiative. I'm willing to say 90% of the American public has no idea, which is something we need to improve. The next thing we did at the front end when we were looking at water, World Economic Forum, as you know, they do an annual event in Davos. Great reports if you want stimulating reading. So I Googled to see what they were talking about. And notice again, for the top 10 global risks, water is 3, climate change is 5, and extreme weather events is 6. There seems to be a theme here in terms of the future that we're going to live in. Here's the other dimension if you Google this report. The potential impact and the likelihood is highest for the water crisis. So now you know why if you go to a lot of the policy think tanks in DC and around the world, you'll hear people say, water is not only the economic issue of the future, it's the national security issue of the future. There are in the globe 256 transboundary waterways. That means they run through multiple countries. So think of what that means to a future state and go back and look at the map I showed you the first slide. So what do we know, having read all this, having done all this, after about 18 months, because Brian knows you got to walk in and tell the boss, here's what I'm doing. How am I doing? I got 10 minutes. I'm going to roll. I'm good for another hour. You walk in and you say there are 1 billion people that lack safe drinking water. There are 2.6 billion that lack sanitation. There are 5 million people a year dying from lack of hygiene, and 89% of those people live in rural areas, so guess where we're going? And the irony was, the timing again, I mentioned Greif. The CEO of Greif just happened to approach Ohio State to say, what can you do to help solve this global issue at the same time? So what did we create? A global water initiative. It's an interesting concept. I don't know if I'll survive it. but it says Ohio State is going to be the neutral technology integrator to solve these problems. And to do that, we will collaborate with other leading research universities, NGOs, companies, international organizations. But that's what we've been briefing and vetting now for almost 12 months, and it just got a thumbs up from our provost, who handed me a check to staff it. That's a big step for any school to say, we are not the fount of knowledge for everything. And so we've been working this pretty aggressively. It's requirements driven, something most universities don't like to say as well. It's where did the requirements coming from? I'm in the process of trying to frame MOUs with the Peace Corps, USAID, World Vision, World Water Supply Network, and others to make this work. And here's the interesting thing, of all those briefings we did, there was a bank in the Netherlands who, when they heard it, said, we need to help you make this happen. So Rabobank is now my corporate sponsor. Most Americans don't know who they are. Fourth largest bank in the world and the leading bank for food and agriculture. So it's a small world out there of people trying to do something new and different. Next one. This is what the system looks like that we have been briefing people. When I say an end-to-end system, water in, sanitation at the back end, health in the middle, hygiene, aquaponics, agriculture. How do you build an economy around water and deal with the reuse and recycling at the back end? My goal today was to prototype what I call my refrigerator chart for you. I just don't have it done. So I actually, in my coat, have my refrigerator chart. If you go home, look in the back of your refrigerator, and the next time you'll see me, I'll have that design, and I'll be able to tell you every part that we're going to integrate into these systems. I'll tell you what pump, what sanitation system, so we're slowly getting there. So this is this theme again, how do you connect the parts? We went out and we benchmarked schools. I'm going to mention two of these quickly. The top one that you see, Purdue University, that unit costs $150. It's a simple UV array with a piece of plastic pipe running through it. It'll take away all your cryptosporidium, E. coli, things like that. Price point, $150. Let me show you a couple others. This is my favorite. This was a design project at Cornell University, faculty member who had grown up in Central America. He wanted a wastewater treatment complex for villages of 1,000 people. You had to use local parts, and oh, by the way, you could have no electrical current. You had to use gravity assist systems. The design was so successful, there are now 12 in Central America. They've been invited to India to put them in place, and there's now a company spun out called Agua Clara that's doing this. You can also Google this. This is open innovation, so you can access all the drawings, because their hope is you'll make them better, and future systems will be even better than this. To make it happen in this instance, we partnered with MIT, Cornell, Purdue, Nebraska, Penn State, and Michigan State. Notice all land-grant colleges, and on the bottom, we partnered with the Nelson Mandela Institute in Africa. And then to make sure we could go to companies and foundations, we hired PricewaterhouseCoopers in New York to validate it, and this is one of several charts where they benchmarked what we were doing, our basic concept, all those different dimensions, and I'm pleased to say we got an A grade. But what did we really learn trying to do this project? Something you probably all know, but we don't celebrate enough. How many Ohio-based entities, or Ohioans, were in the places I went to brief people? Drink Local, Drink Tap, Erin Huber in Cleveland, CSU grad. She's on her way right now to Tanzania. They're doing water and education programs in Uganda and Tanzania. Be a great speaker. She has so much energy, you'd be exhausted when she's done. P&G Foundation. The foundation are doing these little capsules you put in the water so you can take contaminated water, it purifies it, you pour it through a simple filter, and you can get a clean glass of water, which most people equate with good health. Greif. Greif, again, is the largest packaging company in the world, started in Cleveland, built barrels for a guy named Rockefeller. This is their new design. This is the backpack, so you don't have to carry the jerry can anymore. And if any of you are in the service, I can carry up to 100 pounds pretty easily with this on my shoulders. So this is their new thing. They spun out a new not-for-profit, great Christmas gift for $10. I'm like, no. Hakati. Hakati is out of Columbus, Ohio. It's a VC guy out of Chicago who did well. and now he wants to do good. His name's David Wilhelm. Some of you may know he's the guy trying to bring the Democratic Convention to Columbus in his free time. Quasar, one of the leaders in the anaerobic digesters. They're in Worcester. Pure water access. Believe it or not, medical students. I'm always amazed. How do medical students have free time? But a group of medical students from OSU and the Cleveland Clinic have framed a project, and they're doing water projects now down in South America, in particular in Peru. There's design outreach. So the next time you're bored, a group of guys at Battelle, sorry, all guys, and at OSU would meet every day for lunch. And they were looking for how do you have meaning in your life. And they were talking about not-for-profits they can join, things like that. And one of them came up and said, well, we're all engineers. Why don't we solve a real problem? They created this not-for-profit. It now produces the top-ranked pump in the world. It's got a star next to it by everybody. That was done in their free time. Again, open innovation. And when people at J&J Medical in Indianapolis heard, they joined the team. I'm pleased to say Greg teaches at OSU, and I'm doing my best to steal Tom. And then last I mentioned Charity.Water. But you can probably tell, there I was, rolling, doing great. I'm out in the international community, and then the phone rang. That's my boss. Did you hear what happened yesterday in Toledo? 4 minutes. I go real fast. We had an incident, as you all know, and the question was, what could we do to deal with this issue? Notice the algae, and that's really how thick it is. And it got into the ingest system. So again, we read a lot, but I won't tell you how much. But we used this plan as our baseline. It talked about what you want to accomplish. Safe drinking water, knowing you can eat the fish, pretty basic things. So we framed a new OSU initiative around this. We call this Field to Faucet. Why would you be startled after 5 minutes knowing it's another end-to-end system? But it looks at all the dimensions. I'll give you a couple of facts, and then you tell me how to solve the problem. The toxins in Sandusky Basin and in the Maumee Basin are different, and yet we say they have the same source. Phosphorus causes algae. The nitrogen seems to be the accelerator to create the toxin. Is the nitrogen coming off the field? Is it already in the lake bed being energized by the invasive species that have come into the lake? Do you know that 85% of all the runoff occurs in 2 to 5 days? Now, solve that problem for people. It's a pretty complex problem. So the dean of the ag school announced Field to Faucet. We're off enrolling. We're looking at safe drinking water, quality of the lake runoffs, and we're trying to do another thing. We're trying to incentivize market-based initiatives, reuse and recycling, to create a new industry in the state of Ohio. So in the back of the room, come up with innovative solutions for the future. And we're going to be a catalyst to get this going. Having thought we were done with that, the phone rang, and it was the chancellor. That's where I met the folks that are here today from KSU and Heidelberg, and their support's been unbelievable. But we're defining right now a set of research initiatives for the chancellor in the state of Ohio. Not that they have challenging metrics. The research needs to result in solutions by the next planting or the next bloom season, meaning 2015, and the far long-term research is the following year. The reason I can't tell you about the projects is everyone in the room engaged knows we're reviewing them all tomorrow. They go to the chancellor next week, and never surprise your boss in public. Notice again, though, the whole coalition of universities across the state working on this. It's really a great activity. This is the extent of the problem. Notice again that despite what we think, the Maumee Basin isn't just dictated by Ohio. So we're also OSU on its own. We're sending checks to Purdue and Michigan State to integrate them into the activity and to facilitate data sharing, another first for the university. And so when you look, this is the cluster of schools right now working to solve this problem. You didn't get the lip one, did you? I'm getting the 1 minute and I am done. So am I done? I have one quote for you. We will skip water accounting. We will never know the worth of water until the well runs dry. So thank you.
Thank you, Marty, and I thank Brian for being our timekeeper today. Our speaker has graciously agreed to respond to written questions from the audience. You have cards on your table. If you have a question, write it out, and someone will bring them to us to the front. David Hunter, the chairperson of the program committee for the Akron Roundtable, will present your questions. Thank you.
want to thank you for the global nature of your remarks, and at the end of your remarks, you touched on a regional issue here with the algae bloom. And I'd like you to take a minute and tell us what you see to be possibly a legislative facet to the solution. In other words, some sort of statutes that would regulate chemicals that tend to facilitate this situation.
Sure, so you all heard I used to work for the U.S. Senate. For one of the ground rules I have with the Chancellor and the directors of the state offices, we've got so many people already working policy at the state level, local level, and legislative level. We focused on the research. How do you aggregate research and produce results? So I took a buy on that for a very good reason. It's hard to win on that one. But there's a bunch of initiatives. There's a bill right now pending that'll ban the use of manure on fields in the winter months. Like I said, you can look at all these things incrementally, but you got to look at them as a system. So when you look out in the Maumee Basin, and I'm sure you've driven through it, right? It's this huge area with lots of streams and rivers and feeders, but we've been trying to solve the problem at the point of the two basins. What we're proposing is how do you push your solution sets up and out into Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, and have distributed solution sets so that you don't let this aggregate. And part of those decision sets are how do you reuse this? Would it interest you to know we're predicting a global shortage of phosphorus? And that's with 7 billion people, not the 9. So the whole green revolution was based on this. So I stood aside from policy.
Our audience has provided several questions in this vein. What impact will fracking have on the access and quality of water supply in the United States?
You know, and Brian will tell you, my other sidebar job is, and I don't know if you know this, Ohio State was just awarded a DOE, National Energy Test Lab Award, to create a new environmental technology lab in the Utica Shale oil country. I'm old school. I like to think I understand the issues and then I go pursue the extraction and other things. But our goal is to have this up and running by next year. We're in discussions right now with the Muskegon Water Conservation District about siting the facility. But we'd like to provide that capacity to deal with it. But I was going to put it on all of your tables because it leads to this. There's a whole new world out there called water accounting, another interesting thing. For those of us in the East, we don't think much about that. But if you live in the West, right, and you pay so much per acre foot, and you just had a drought in California, you kind of know what water accounting is about. But what if you go out in time, we have water accounting? I give you 3 numbers. It takes 39 gallons of water to produce a glass of red wine. So tonight, enjoy it. It takes 9,750 gallons of water to produce 2 ounces of potato chips, and it takes the equivalent to produce 1 hamburger. So to your question, imagine you're going to live in a future state where some of the things that you take as a given are no longer a given, or you're going to dramatically improve how we do the processing of food and things like that. So there's another market opportunity to engage in a new market. But it is a big issue, and we're right in the middle of it right now.
I'm going to change my plans about having for dinner tonight a hamburger, chips, and a glass of wine, but
Margarita pizza's 30, so.
there's nothing left. Would you please expand on your relationship with charity and water?
Yeah, so Charity.Water, organization in New York City. So right now, my regular beat in terms of key organizations, I'm regularly in touch with Charity.Water because I love their innovative model and energy. We're in discussions with them. Remember those 5,000 wells I mentioned in Tanzania? Ohio State's been asked to create a new school based on the food, water, energy nexus in the capital of Tanzania at the University of Dodoma. As part of that, we're also looking at those 5,000 wells. And what we're trying to come up with is a concept. We would externally fund the first 100 units to validate that by going to standardized systems with a supply chain, the government will get value they've never gotten before, and then the government will fund the next set. That's now pending at Charity.Water, who is a field engineer literally in Tanzania looking at the wells. It's pending with Clinton Global Initiative, and it's pending with World Vision. We were looking at 3 not-for-profits to help fund that front-end initiative.
We always get thoughtful questions from our audience. Here's one of them. Dave Senlak gave a talk at Kent State recently and discussed closing the loop, cleaning wastewater sufficiently to reuse even as drinking water. Is this part of your fridge diagram?
Believe it or not, if you live in a world of scarcity, you gotta deal with the back end of reuse and recycling. You have no choice. Now, can we do it, like I said, at price points that enable us? One of the systems I'm looking at is currently deployed in the Yucatan in Mexico, designed by faculty and students at MIT. The price point used to be 20 cents to take brackish water. This region has so little water, it's brought in 55-gallon drums and dropped off, and it looks like sludge. And it costs 20 cents to purify 1 liter. The new MIT solar-based technology costs 1 cent. So now you just freed up 19 cents. So am I looking at it? I am looking at it primarily in the context of developing nations. But as a NASA guy, I can tell you, if you want to come, I'll get you an invite to Glenn or Johnson or Marshall. Part of the tour is we have an environmentally closed life support system on Space Station. You get the message. Your byproducts go into the system, and that's your drinking water, and that's a test of your manhood when you go on the tour. You really believe enough where you'll have a glass of water at the end. So
Let me blend two questions here. A member of our audience notes that some pundits have even speculated that the next world war will be fought over water. And here in the Northeast part of Ohio, we have a plentiful supply. Are we being good stewards about that precious supply, or is there more that we can do and not be quite so lackadaisical about this plentiful supply?
Well, when you saw the pictures, we all know, how many of you go up to the lake, have a house on the lake, a camp on the lake, or a boat on the lake? A lot of you. We had an incident this year. I've been driving by that for 15 years. I'm sad to tell you, when I lived in Solon, every time we went to the lake, we had to come back. You could go boating, but we either got a bacterial alert or an algae alert. To me, that's bad management of a precious resource, and we need to do a much better job, because globally it's an important issue. There are currently court cases pending with people that want to pull water out of the Great Lakes. I would suggest you have a critical asset, and how well we use that asset in the future probably will be a key barometer of the entire regional economy. Our challenge, and one of the maps I skipped through you can look at, is we are the ag center of the Great Lake region. If you go to the upper regions, right, they do mining, they do timber, but we're the ag center, which creates a lot of different issues. We have the most shallow lake, which creates a lot of different issues. So if you don't know, we have algae in the western basin of the lake. The center is what's called a dead zone. It suffers from hypoxia, which is nitrogen and nitrate runoff. And the far eastern side, because the water is deeper, is a very healthy lake. But we have a responsibility, and we have a responsibility globally in terms of water use. Yeah, God forbid we fight wars over water.
Please comment on the population growth in the U.S. desert Southwest. They're running out of water. What's the solution?
Well, next global vortex, we'll see how many of you, where's Cheryl Mike, so head to Arizona to play golf and get out of the cold weather. It's a huge issue. You know, for years, the model was, don't worry about it, we'll use the affluent. But they don't have the affluent. So again, we have an international issue right now between the U.S. and Mexico. It used to be the issue was, if you go to Yucca, Arizona, you know, the Colorado River was dry. Now it's actually contaminated the bay, which is impacting fishing in Mexico. So these again are issues you need to deal with. You know, you can't expect to have what you have in Akron, Ohio, and live in Tucson. You either have to adjust to the world you live in, or it's going to be a tough battle. The aquifers can't support you, and the rivers can't support you. So you will see changes in patterns. You know, I don't believe in all the maps you see about, you know, I'm going to be 5 feet underwater if I live here or 3 over there. But the changes are subtle. So let me give you a real one. For the last 10 years, I've been doing research in the Arctic and the Antarctic in my free time as well. When we were in the Arctic 2 years ago, right before I came here, there's a joke. We had on Hawaiian shirts, we had lays, we had Dow penguins in our arms, and you all know penguins are in Antarctica, and we sent postcards out saying it's so nice here, even the penguins are coming from Antarctica. There was no ice. Now, why was it an issue? I have a friend who's trying to be the first pilot in the world to fly solo and land at the South Pole and the North Pole. there was no ice for him to land on. So after flying all the way up, he couldn't set that record, which is something the Explorers Club is really looking forward to. So again, there's these changes. If you go into the Himalayas, Battelle tracks snowmates, and they have for years out of Pacific Northwest Lab. What are the two major countries on the left and right of the Himalayas? China and India. Look at snow mass. Snow mass is down dramatically. Is that because of climate change, ecological decisions, timber cutting? It just doesn't matter, but the access to fresh water is going down, and it's a big issue. So we've got to learn how to recycle and reuse, and we got to find a way to make desalination much less costly and less energy intensive.
We have time for 2 more questions. What single thing can all of us do to preserve this most precious resource?
Wow. I love it. I have another sheet that I was going to put on your tables. Brian will tell you. Did he tell you? We showed up. I got here early as requested, but I left my stick in my car out at Route 77 in Bob Evans. So all those props are not here because I forgot. How many of you are old enough to remember the last water crisis when I told you to put a brick in your toilet? And when I told you not to water your lawn? And when I told you we have cycles? And I hate to say it, we're slow learners. So you heard where I started my career. My first job was to work on CAFE standards for the US Senate, auto emission and auto mileage. Never did I think when we wrote those were good for 50 years. When I lived in France, how many of you have lived overseas as part of your career? Right? 5 gallons of hot water a day because you're not going to waste any more energy than that heating you. Lights that turn off when you go down the hallway. Separate thermostat in every room so you don't waste energy. I think the answer is we are such a supply-based, demand-based group. We've got to figure the value of conservation, and the time's coming. If you read, I don't know if it's in your paper today, big story in the Columbus Dispatch today about the adverse of ink bottles in the ocean is stifling the ocean water and contaminating it. So one thing you can do is recycle, and the other is reduce your consumption. You get 1 shower a day, so for joggers, you're in big trouble.
I think we'll close with this question. What sparked the obvious passion and enthusiasm you have about water?
Oh, yeah. Again, and I'm telling you the honest truth, it was one course, one teacher, and an event in 1969. Now, as you get a little older, more mature, as my wife would say, you sit and you say, wouldn't you like to leave the world a better place tomorrow than you found it when you walked into it? This is one of those issues. And I think, again, if we put our energy and innovation behind this, if we develop technology based on the price points of the market we're trying to go to versus what we like to sell to, I think we can have a profound impact. And I think that's one of the things we need to better understand. The world is so small, we can't afford to have 1 billion, 2 billion people around the world without the basic necessities of life. So for me, it's a cause. And I know a lot of you grew up in the cause generation, so at age 66, I'm still cause-oriented, and this is my cause.
Mr. Kress, thank you for being with us today. On behalf of the Akron Roundtable, it's my pleasure to present to you the Contemplative Sun, which is an artist by the name of Don Drum in Akron, Ohio, who designed this specifically for the Akron Roundtable. So thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Again, I'd like to remind you that the slides from today's presentation will be posted on our website at akronroundtable.org. We also invite the audience to join us on January 15, 2015 at the Quaker Station in Akron, Ohio, where we will present Mark Cullen, the publisher of the Akron Beacon Journal, who will present on the topic, the media disruption and what it means for the Beacon. Thank you all for being with us. Happy New Year, happy holidays. We have a great 2015 planned for all of you. Be safe. Thank you.